Hello, my name is Zoltan Acs. I'm the director of the Vienna Institute for Global Studies. The Institute was started about a year and a half ago to try to understand where the world is going and how we bridge this change that the world is experiencing. Let me read a small quote that I think puts this into perspective. Writing in his prison cell as a political prisoner in fascist Italy after World War I, the philosopher Antonio Gramsci famously declared, "The crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born." In this integrum, a great variety of hybrid symptoms appear. A century later, today, we are in another integrum, and the morbid symptoms are everywhere. The US-led order has ended, but the multipolar world has not yet been born. The urgent priority is to give birth to a new multilateral order that can keep the peace and the path to sustainable development. The Vienna Institute was set up to try to think about how we understand this transition. And if we think about the world today in 2025, the next 25 years takes us to 2050, and this new world order, which has been in transition now for about 25 years, has another 25 years to go. You may think of it as this is the time we need a whole generation to be replaced and to basically create this new world order. So we are between the old and the new, and how we bridge this is a challenge for our time. Many people understand this, but do not really know quite how to move forward, what to do, like how much to hold on to the past, how much to think about the future. And so the Institute is trying to work on this. We think of the world in rather simple ways. And I have dubbed this the ice cream cone theory of happiness. And it has three flavors: chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And it deals with three important issues. One is technology, entrepreneurship, innovation, right? We're in this AI revolution, right? What role does technology play? How do we embrace it? How do we worry about it? How do we use it to make our lives better, right? The second ice cream scoop here is well-being, right? And we know that general well-being in many countries has declined in the last 25 years. If I use the United States as an example, income inequality has risen, unemployment among large parts of the population has been downgraded, people's lives have been upset. So well-being is a huge issue, right? And that leads to political instability. It leads to populist leaders. And many people would argue that the election of Donald Trump was really about the poor and the uneducated voting for change. And we see this also in Europe and other parts of the world, right? The third piece of this theory is about the role of the state and the role of international relations and geopolitics, right? What is the role of the state today? And many people argue that the state today was set up for the 20th century and is really not positioned to deal with the 21st century. So that leads us to think about how we dismantle part of this, right? And how do we build up a state that's more in line with a digital, technological, AI-driven world. then the relationships between countries becomes important, right? And we see the conflict between the US and China, two major powers, both trying to navigate this new world. Right? And then you put this together and you ask the question, how do we think about the future? So over the last 25 years, I have been involved in several research projects that tried to put together large databases to help us understand where we are in some of these areas. So, for example, we worked on the Global Entrepreneurship and Development Index for about 15 years that tried to understand entrepreneurship, innovation, technology in different countries. So we are now in this situation where we've entered this digital era. And when this happened is debated, but I like to think of it this way. We had this global pandemic. Before the pandemic, we shunned technologies, and then the pandemic sort of kicked us into the 21st century. And now as we've emerged from this, AI, Zoom meetings, hybrid work situations, we are sort of in the 21st century now, and we're trying to now figure out how we get to 2025 and build this new system. So I'm here with the team that is working on this here at the Vienna Institute. And let me introduce, the first one is Szerb László. He's research director and data scientist. I've known László for 25 years. We've worked on index building for most of that time. We've worked with major corporations, with banks, international organizations. Our JEDI index was one of the first and leading indexes to try to understand entrepreneurship around the world. And we're now in the process of developing a digital entrepreneurship index that we think is actually unique for two reasons. One, it has almost the whole world, and it has 170 countries. And it has a time series component, so we can actually track the progress of digital technologies. Next to him sits Stefan. Stefan was a student of Szerb László at the University of Pécs. He's now here a postdoc working on the digital index. And Judith is from Budapest. She has a PhD in public administration, and she's been studying entrepreneurial ecosystems in the Danube region for the last couple of years, and she's here with us. So I'm going to ask them to talk just a little bit about what we're doing. And so, Sarah, let me start with you. Can you give us sort of a short introduction to the Digital Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Index that we're working on?
Yeah, welcome everybody. This index, we have been working on this index for the last 5-6 years. And previously we created another index that was the Digital Platform Economy Index. That was a good starting point now to have a wider view about this kind of digital led ecosystems. And what we recognized basically that that's not enough just to try to modify a previous index, but this kind of digital technology caused so many and so deep changes that there is a need to create a brand new index, and that's we call the Digital Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Index. And everybody knows that there is a wide range of effect of this kind of technology, and one of the major effects is how it changed the process, how we do entrepreneurship.
Can you help the audience understand when we talk about an ecosystem, what do we mean? We hear this word all the time.
Yeah. We think that entrepreneurship basically is an individual type of action. And however, this kind of entrepreneurs do not work in isolation, but as a part of a larger environment. And where there are some other supporting agents of the entrepreneurial process, there are some governmental institutions, there are some users, there are some consumers, and all of them are affected by this entrepreneurship. So we have to include them because the entrepreneur, what and how entrepreneur the business process is doing, that depends also on this kind of factors. So when we include all of this in a holistic perspective, that's we call basically an ecosystem.
Is this ecosystem index unique? Is it different from what other people are doing?
It's quite different. And one of the major difference is the variety of this kind of index. Other existing indexes focusing on startups, on talents, on the digital technology or the mobile technology, while we include all of this. We examine 12 aspects of this kind of digital ecosystem. And basically, previous indices also handled the digital technology as some kind of external enablers, I would say. However, we integrated deeply into this kind of index. That's also a unique. And you also mentioned that this index is for 170 countries, so we can examine the varieties of this kind of digital entrepreneurship ecosystem, because each of them are unique in some sense. But we can measure with using a same methodology, but providing various type of pictures. And also, if we can track how this kind of digital entrepreneurship ecosystem evolves over time, that's important to bridge basically the past and the future.
We had a small talk several times about the digital divide that lots of people talk about all around the world, right? The haves and the have-nots of digital technology, who it benefits, who it doesn't. You indicated that it looks like digital technologies actually, when they're adopted, when the ecosystem is strengthened, it leads to a lessening of the digital divide, not an increasing of it. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. One of the major aims with this kind of digital entrepreneurship ecosystem index was to examine not only the startup activities, but also some kind of other important effects. And one of the effects you mentioned is the well-being effect. And the other effects are more societal or environmental type of effect. And the societal effect, what is very important, that this kind of ecosystem should be an inclusive one, involving as many users, as many entrepreneurs as we can do. And the more we include, the faster this kind of change, this painful change is going to be between the past and the future. What we recognized when examined income in a cross-country income inequalities, and as compared to this kind of digital entrepreneurship ecosystem inequalities, the digital entrepreneurship ecosystem inequalities were much less than the income inequalities. It means that many countries are trying to reach in a faster speed the leading countries.
You know, one of the most interesting observations on technical diffusion, right, is how quickly these products diffuse both within a country and between countries. And, you know, an interesting observation is the telephone, right? In the United States, the mission of the Bell company was to put a telephone in every house. And after 100 years, they still didn't succeed. everybody didn't have a telephone. Electricity, right? There are lots of places in the world still where there's no electricity after 100 years. But one of the interesting things we've noticed is the smartphone, which is a highly sophisticated piece of technology, in 10 years has diffused around the world. When I was just in Bali, in the rainforest, in the jungle, and people that are still living sort of half in the jungle, half out of it there, all have a smartphone. And the diffusion of this has been incredible. 7 billion people today have a smartphone where they can get on the internet and see what's going on in the world. And how this has improved their lives is an interesting question that this lends itself to. Now, let me move to Stefan, right? So Stefan has been working on this index, putting the data together, trying to understand it, right? And then one of the interesting questions that emerges is, what can we observe about how different parts of the world are doing, right? For example, Europe and the rest of the world, or Europe versus the United States. What can you tell us about what you see in this index?
Yeah, the observations from the index are really interesting and insightful from the perspective that these digital factors are mostly focused in these already developed countries. So, for example, if we look at the top in the world, like US, so first of all, they were already having the infrastructure in place and the industry in place. And from here comes also my interest in the index, because I believe that much of the digitalization will follow the industrial patterns. If you do not have industries developed, you will already be so constrained to adopt technologies that will be used by those industries. So you will have a easy digitalization where you will have a soft digitalization where you have web pages, access to internet, but you might not have the adoption of the technologies because you do not have an industrial capacity to digitize those industries into services. So this is really dependent on the country. So what we can see generally is that you first need a base, a talent base. And if we compare, for example, Central Eastern Europe, we can see that during the years, the talent migrated from this region. They went to the core. If you look at these patterns, the minds who are capable of building new industries and creating new startups moved away. So this region might be a little bit in danger and might be a little bit incapable of grasping and of absorbing these new coming technologies, which require much more talent and much more.
Let me ask you the question differently. What do we really mean by the diffusion of technology and the development of the ecosystem, right? It appears that the technology has become ubiquitous. Every country has digital technology infrastructure of some kind because most people in the world have a smartphone. Is this just a shallow interpretation and we're looking for a deeper development? Or does this by itself lead to development in a lot of parts of the world?
So as I said a little bit earlier, this is really dependent on the local factors. So you have on one hand the infrastructure. Everybody has access now, as you said, that the phone took the place. But it's a different thing when we take more specific technologies. So you have access to internet, but how do you use the internet? What new advanced technologies you are applying in your industries? That's what matters in terms of growth. So if you cannot adopt these really specific and complex technologies, so for example, now the trend is going towards AI agents, and I believe, in my personal opinion, is that AI agents will be the last stage of digitalization, because until now it was the web page. You have a web page. Oh, I'm digital. No, you are not digital. So what will AI do? Will take those physical part of the industry and will connect it to the digital, and you will have a more autonomous and more robotic type of digitalization, where you can put different sensors to interact with AI models, create different agents. So what we actually look with the index, how we connect this, is that we try to identify the bottlenecks. Where can countries make an input or an improvement to be capable to adopt these more developed technologies?
So, let me sort of give you my thumbnail view of the last 50 years, right? In my humble, simple view, right, the digital revolution starts in 1971 when we invent the Intel 4004 chip. Right? And so in the 70s, we invent the chip industry. In the 80s, we invent the PC. In the 90s, we have the World Wide Web and the internet. In the 2000s, we get the smartphone. In 2010, we have cloud computing, big data, right? And then in the 2020s, it looked like AI and the AI agent, as you say, would be the last stage of this digital revolution. What does the index tell us about this?
We can see that we can see that the technology is mostly developed and transformed into new startups, and they basically are again used more in those countries where you already have an existent knowledge about how to adopt, how to develop new industries. So
the knowledge-based development is crucial for really fully utilizing this technology.
Yes.
Yeah. Judith, so you wrote a dissertation on the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Hungary. And, one of the goals of this institute, or one of its missions, right, is to try to understand the role of innovation technology, AI, right, in this Danube region. Can you tell us something about what you learned from your research about this topic in this region?
Yes, so the first question is why this region is even important for us.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons is that it's heavily dependent on traditional industries. What right now in this digital transformation might be either transforming or it can cause some difficulties in these countries. And what countries we mean, it's we follow the EU macro region categorization. We have a country level index, so in Germany we take the whole country, and because of the war in Ukraine, we don't focus in Ukraine right now, so we are focusing on 13 countries altogether. And it's a really differing region by how much it's developed, how much how well it's doing. And it's really visible in our index as well, because, for example, Germany and Austria is a leading country in this region. But if we take the EU candidate countries from this region, Moldova, Bosnia-Herzegovina, they are not doing so well. In the index from the region, Bosnia-Herzegovina is the last one in our Digital Entrepreneurship Ecosystem. It's in the 85th place, while the leading one, Germany, is in the 11th. So there are huge differences within, but still we can identify some patterns from the index, what can be interesting and what can be used to.
You know, Serb and I have been studying this global entrepreneurship ecosystem for a long time, and the Central European Danube region has always been in this weak position. You know, it's not as bad as Africa, but it's not really good, right? It's like in the middle. And it appears like it can't break out of this because of this reliance on these traditional industries. What do you think the real weaknesses are? Because, you know, this institute is partly about trying to understand this region.
Yes, what the index is showing that we are really strong in the digital infrastructure. The digital literacy of people is not bad at all. So we see that the financial facilitation and the entrepreneurship part is the weak.
Yeah.
What we see as well is that the fintech companies are missing or not enough what they can provide here. And also the digital startups and scale-ups are the weak point of this sector, of this part. Like we would think that it's just the eastern part, the Balkan of the region, what is lacking the startups, but now the whole region.
The whole region.
And to see what is the reason of it, it can be multiple reasons.
Yeah. It's not an easy answer.
It's not an easy answer.
Sir, when do you think that we will be able to sort of launch this index?
Right now, we are working with this index to produce 3 different reports. One will serve basically the academic community. The other will serve basically the public, and the third one will focus on the Danube region. And we are proceeding quite well. And I guess that in the next semester, probably between September and November, we can consecutively launch all 3 indices or all 3 reports. All of this based on this kind of index, but with different depths and different emphasis.
Stefan, you spent some time in the consulting world. Who do you think will be who will this index be really useful to or for? The business community, the policy community, the academic community? Where do you see its greatest impact?
I see it that a big impact and a big help would be for the European institutions, because they are now at the crossroads. They are trying to look at all the fields, at all the technologies, at all the direction they could take. What should we do? Where we should invest? Where should we focus? And they are just comparing themselves with US and comparing themselves with China, and they don't know where to focus because they have a broad focus and they don't know what to change and where to look. So I think that the index can contribute in this direction by helping them and like, hey, that's where you have to improve so that you can maybe catch up or maybe even be better than other countries.
I've had this idea that if the Danube region could wave a magic wand and eliminate EU regulation, that this might create a fire under this region that would help it accelerate its development. Do you think there's any validity to this thought that regulation is just weighing down this region and not letting it cooperate and work together to try to move into this digital age?
You know, I was thinking a lot about that, and I feel that regulation is a double-edged sword. I was lucky and I was able to talk with a lot of people from the region who is dealing with startups and digitalization. And in one hand, you're right. There is a lot of regulation which doesn't allow us to develop, and actually it's not some old regulations, but new regulation is coming out, which is not letting these digital entrepreneurs to develop, or fintechs. Although there are some helping regulation for fintechs, but on the other hand, there are national regulations popping up which doesn't help them. On the other hand, they are complaining a lot that there are some regulations which is missing, which doesn't allow startups to proceed. And that's why a lot of startups and scale-ups are leaving the region, because they are moving to countries where that regulation exists, like convertible note or this kind of
So what you're really saying, there's a lot of regulations from the previous system that is now declining, and there aren't enough regulations that be needed to help us move into this new era.
Yes.
And so we really need to work on both of these. Yeah.
That's what I took from what I experienced in the last years, yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, László, Stefan, Judith. We look forward to launching this index at the Institute, trying to influence or help navigate this path into the future. And we think of this digital entrepreneurship ecosystem as both a roadmap and a compass to try to cross this bridge into the 21st century. Thank you very much for being part of this panel, and I look forward to seeing the index coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.